G'day, Ian Dooley here again with the Australian Employment Party podcast, Let's Get Fiscal. And this is, I'm here with Tim Jones.
Hello there.
And this week we're going to talk about Brexit. That's the big news. But first, some housekeeping. You can learn all about us on australianemploymentparty.org. You can tweet at Ian Dooley, that's IAINDOOLEY, or at Fourth Left 2 for Tim. And you can search Australian Employment Party on Facebook to find the Facebook group. And if you're tweeting or tagging us on Facebook, just use the hashtag OzMMT, that's OZMMT. Okay, Tim, thanks for joining me again this week.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure. Thank you. Weekly thing.
So the big news is Brexit. I mean, that's hard to ignore, but I also just wanted to quickly mention this article you shared with me midweek, which was Bernadi complaining about being vilified as homophobic because he comes out, against gay marriage and things like that.
It's odd.
Yeah, well, the article was pretty odd, but what his arguments boiled down to, he wants to see his moral opinion or his moral code recognised in legislation somehow.
Yeah.
And our policy, I just want to restate this, that our social policy framework is that the government should be an ethical authority and not a moral authority.
Absolutely.
So no persons or no groups or no individual moral code should be legislated. It's really about ethics. How do our choices affect each other, not how do we choose to live our lives? In the case of gay marriage specifically, that would manifest itself that we would definitely allow gay marriage, but would never try to legislate that we would force, for example, the Catholic Church to marry gay people.
No, well that's right. It's not about people like Bernadi or what they want. It's about the individuals and about how they are secure within themselves and not accosted by others and forced to do things that others believe is right.
Right. So it's not about winners and losers. It's about living together happily.
Yeah. Okay.
So anyway, Brexit. Brexit was one we've been back and forth a little bit this week. You think that they should have remained, and I think that they should have left, but not for the reason that most people voted to leave.
Yeah, it's interesting.
So what's your opinion of the Leave Remain debate?
Well, I was upset about people being manipulated by Rupert Murdoch and Conservatives in general. It had very little to do with the left wing of British politics at all. Essentially, it seems like there's a Brexit and regrets it in hashtags, and so that you have people who wake up in the morning, more vote counted, so amazing. There they are left with a situation where they can't work overseas, they can't travel easily, they can't do a lot of things because they felt like having a little tanty. Fantastic, and they were manipulated into having a tanty by people like Rupert Murdoch, who can't die soon enough, in my personal point of view. Sorry.
Yeah, there's no disagreement there. I think that Rupert Murdoch is a massive scumbag, and I have actually done a scumbag Rupert Murdoch meme with a scumbag hat and everything. So
hashtag scumbag. Yeah,
totally. So I think that it's one of these situations. It's very confusing because you have left-wing progressives wanting to stay because of the openness with Europe, and it's a very progressive feeling.
Sure.
And then the right-wing nationalists wanting to leave because they kind of want to close things off, and they're quite xenophobic and they're afraid of immigration.
But you're saying both of those things are relevant compared to what you're talking about. Yeah.
Right. So my leave vote is really purely economic, because even though the UK was not had not accepted the euro as their currency, they still print the Great British Pound. They were still subject to economic conditions which limited their fiscal policy space, and really was the responsibility which were responsible for a lot of the austerity that we've seen coming out of the UK in the past few years.
Same as happened to Greece, really.
Oh, yeah, I mean, it's a less extreme version, but it has its roots in the same causes. It's that sort of Brussels, Central European control of the economy, according to this harsh model of neoliberalism, which was really imposing a lot of austerity.
Well, there's that word again, isn't it? Neoliberalism. That's the bugbear.
Yeah. So I think that it's a shame that it will energize a really right-wing nationalist sentiment, but all of the things that you're talking about, travelling, trading, working abroad, all of those things have been done between nations that didn't have a specific agreement in place. And I think that sort of uber free trade actually benefits finance and banking more than it benefits workers.
It certainly could. Yeah. And I think we were talking about before about a credit downgrade. Like people are worried about a credit down. What does that mean when you've got a fiat currency like the British pound? Can you talk to that?
Yeah. So I think it was Moody's, either Moody's or Standard & Poor's overnight, one of the corrupt bastard agencies. I have no idea why we're still listening to these mongrels. They were the ones that rated the junk prime mortgage bonds and everything during the global financial crisis as AAA. So whatever, I have no idea why they're still relevant or existing. But that aside, they downgraded the UK's credit rating overnight from AAA, outlook negative, something like that. Now, the alleged result of this is that Britain is now supposed to have a harder time borrowing money and will therefore have to increase the interest rate that it pays on its treasuries.
But who would they borrow pounds from?
Well, that's the ridiculous thing. They issue the pound, and it is actually a logical impossibility for the currency issuing government to borrow its own currency. The fact we even call it debt or borrowing is really erroneous, fallacious kind of terminology. So I just want to refer to a couple of this video is broadcast on a channel which people can subscribe to, and there's other videos on that channel, and two in particular I'd like people to check out. One is called "Bond Sales Are Not a Borrowing Operation," and the other is that the Australian government cannot borrow Australian dollars. And these are logical, incontestable facts. It's sort of like disagreeing with gravity.
Oh yeah, I'm happy with that. I think I've got a list of words here: furphy, deception, delusion, consensus trance. I think was your phrase.
Consensus trance. Yep.
I like that, a consensus trance, because it's oh my God, I don't want to start there. Anyway, keep going.
Yeah, so I mean the credit rating thing, and we have the same scares here in Australia. And might I add, every single party in Australia. No one has come out and said we can ignore safely these thugs, these irresponsible bullies, these irrelevant mongrels in the rating agencies because we issue the currency. Except, funnily enough, Donald Trump. Don't get me started on him.
Please don't.
Right, so he came out with this thing, and it's like the only correct thing he's ever said, that the Australian government can never fail to pay the interest or its obligations, and in fact is logically incapable of borrowing its own currency. Now, credit rating by definition measures default risk. It doesn't measure willingness to pay. It doesn't take into account inflation. Some people say, oh, well, if the interest rate's too high, the inflation rate will be so big that everyone's assets will be wiped out. And it's like, okay, that would have to be such ridiculous hyperinflation that it would be unimaginable.
It seems like an artificial rung for people to grab hold of, doesn't it? Even Stephen Koukoulas, is how you pronounce it?
Yeah, Koukoulas or Koukoulas, yeah.
Koukoulas. I just don't understand where he's coming from, because he's not speaking to this evident reality of our fiat currency or anything like that. And I sometimes wonder, where are our evidence-based economists? Why can't we get people to actually see what works instead of what they postulate? It seems. Do economists only run on arrogance? Is that their primary fuel?
I think it all comes down to where they first learned their economics. And when I first came into this, I was surprised to find that economics was not sort of a solved problem. I assumed that economics was one thing, and you went and learned economics the same way you learn maths. No one disagrees with algebra or whatever, but in fact it's really quite contentious. And so if you go into commerce and finance, you learn a model of economics where the market is this pure operational machine that's designed for efficiency. And if you go into a more of a political economics stream, then you are taught how the market arises from government construction. It's a social project. And so that's why you see a lot of the liberal end, liberal capital L end of the spectrum with this free market ideology, because they learned it in commerce and finance degrees.
Well, where are we with economists? Are we Like, are we at the Merchant of Venice? I think you use the term medieval in private discussion to me about where we're at with this stuff. It just seems, it's like, you keep going. I'm astonished.
If you read, there's this amazing book called Making Money by Christine Desan, which has the most detailed academically rigorous account of the construction of money and throughout the ages since classical antiquity, or no, really since the Middle Ages. Classical antiquity, you have to go back and read Finlay. But the overarching message is that we have been in the same paradigm since medieval times with our money. This notion of having to raise revenue and tax and what we've put in place now is a simulation of commodity money, a simulation of the same constraints that we had when we were operating under a gold standard. And it's a needless self-imposed constraint.
It does seem like an overrun of what we were talking about with consensus trance. Now, we've only got a couple of minutes. Ian, where are we going?
Well, I'd just like to leave people with the reaffirm that debt and taxation are not the constraints of spending. That the government cannot borrow its own currency, and that what we're experiencing is an artificial self-imposed constraint. And I want to leave with this analogy. If you had a truck that was speed limited to go a safe speed on the highway, and so the mechanic had accidentally set the speed limit to 40, we would all be in this truck going down the highway at 40, and no one thought to check whether the truck can actually safely go 100. That's the way I think about our economy, because we've got this artificial simulated gold standard with all of the legislation around deficits and spending and budgeting processes and balancing the budget and going to surplus that are constraining the economy, even though we could safely go increase spending and go much faster without inflation risk. Without risking stability. So that's the image I want to leave with people, is that we are stuck in first gear, speed limited to 40, wondering why the hell we're going so slowly.
And it's hard for the average person to accept that the economists that they listen to and trust every day are ignoring really, really fundamental, incontestable notions about facts about our fiat currency and our fiat economy, and how each country is an island. Like, we're particularly an island, don't you think?
Yeah, and what we have now in terms of the possibilities of our economy can take us well into the future. We have a brilliant system now of the way that we're making money, the way that our transaction system works. We could be doing so much more. There's so much potential, and when we really realize this, when we snap out of our trance and look at the future, we can see a much brighter way forward than this misery that we're imposing on ourselves.
Oh, absolutely.
Now.
I'm thinking people are really, really sick of looking at a miserable future. I mean, goodness gracious, we've been here for a long time. Can't we do better than this?
Yeah, we certainly can. That's what we're all about.
Great.